My name is Stephen Whittle. I'm the Professor of Equalities Law here at Manchester Metropolitan University. My chosen writer is somebody called Leslie Feinberg, an American. And I chose a book by Leslie that I first read in 1994 at the point where we were just beginning to organise ourselves to campaign for trans rights here in the UK. So Leslie died a couple of years ago, unfortunately, having written several great books on trans liberation, trans history. The first one, however, was this novel called Stone Butch Blues. I remember many, many years ago when I was a child, literally 15, 16, sitting in the local library trying to find me, trying to find something that talked about me, and I finally found a book by DJ West called Homosexuality, in which there were these characters called Stone Butchers. And Stone Butchers were people who were lesbians, who dressed like men, and they had sex with women as long as the women never touched them and they never had any sexual feelings themselves. And I thought, well, I don't want to be one of them. I want sex, I want it in all its glory in my life. But it was the nearest description to who I was, but I knew it wasn't quite who I was. Eventually I transitioned in 1975 at the age of 19, and in those days, you were the stuff that people wiped off their shoes as they walked in the door. You really were the lowest of the low. We started to campaign and really think about campaigning and early campaigning for trans rights in 1992. We just had our first baby, having fought tooth and nail for my wife to get fertility treatment. The whole thing then was, they wouldn't possibly let somebody like her have any treatment while she loved somebody like me. And I remember the letter that we received and being so mad. And at that time thinking, hold on a minute, I have just got a law degree and a master's in law. I'm going to fight this. And I remember saying to her, at this time, we're not going to be in the stands, we're actually going to be on the park and we're going to get the ball and control it. And eventually we had our first child, and we've now got 4 grown-up children. But when I read Leslie, what I read was the possibilities of being beyond gender. I started my PhD, I'd just spent a whole year reading psychiatric papers in which they said that people like me were fundamentally neurotic, paranoid, incapable, bipolar, you name it, schizophrenic. And I was at one of my lowest ebbs, I think, thinking, is this me? Because I can't recognise me, but it must be. And then I read Leslie. And I thought, this gave me back a sense of being, a sense of capability. Jess, the protagonist in the story, is trans. Transitions, but then transitions back to being in the middle, to being what Jess describes as a he-she. And Jess's good friends, there's friends all the way, but a particular good friend at the end, Ruth, is a trans woman, and they share a house in New York. And you see the beginning of a positive life where two people love each other beyond the boundaries of sex, beyond the boundaries of gender, where all of those things are absolutely irrelevant. And this was how I wanted the world to be for everybody. So I've got a little bit here that particularly I remember reading and just feeling something that gave me a way forward. So this is right at the end of the book. And Jess is in New York and has just taken the subway. The moment I climbed the subway stairs at Christopher Street, I heard an unamplified voice say the words lesbian and gay. When I emerged to street level, I found myself in the midst of a crowd of hundreds of people listening to speakers at a rally. I'd seen gay demonstrations in the streets before. I'd always paused to watch them from across the street, proud this young movement was not beaten back into the closets. But I always walked away, feeling outside of that movement and alone. This time, one voice stopped me in my tracks. It was a young man who took the mic and in a strong voice, trembling with emotion, described being restrained and forced to watch his lover being beaten to death with baseball bats by a gang. I watched him die there on the sidewalk, he cried, and I couldn't save him. We have to do something. This can't keep going on. He handed the microphone to a woman whose hair was wrapped in bright African fabric. She urged others to come up and speak. A young woman from the crowd climbed up on the stage. There were these guys in my neighbourhood in Queens. Her voice could hardly be heard, even with the microphone. They used to yell things at me and my lover. One night, I heard them behind me. I was alone. They pulled me into the parking lot behind the hardware store and raped me. I couldn't stop them. Tears streamed down my face. The man next to me put his hand on my shoulder. His eyes were filled with tears too. I never told my lover what happened, she whispered into the microphone. I felt like we'd have both been raped if I told her. As she climbed down from the stairs, I thought, this is what courage is. It's not just living through the nightmare, it's doing something with it afterwards. It's being brave enough to talk about it to other people. It's trying to organise to change things. And suddenly I felt so sick to death of my own silence that I needed to speak too. It wasn't that there was something in particular I was burning to say. I didn't even know what it would be. I just needed to open my throat for once and hear my own voice. And I was afraid if I let this moment pass, I might never be brave enough to try again. I moved closer to the stage, nearer to finding my voice. The woman who was chairing looked at me. Do you want to speak? I nodded, dizzy with anxiety. Come on up, brother, she urged me. My legs could hardly get me up on the stage. I looked at the hundreds of faces staring at me. I'm not a gay man. My own amplified voice startled me. I'm a butch, a he, she. I don't know if people out there, you hate our guts. I don't know if you call us that anymore. But that single epithet shaped my teenage years. Everyone got very quiet as I spoke, and I knew they were listening. I knew they had heard me. I spotted a femme woman about my age who stood near the back of the crowd. She nodded as I spoke, as though she recognised me. Her eyes were warm with memories. I know about getting hurt, I said, but I don't have much experience talking about it. And I know about fighting back, but mostly know how to do it alone. That's a tough way to fight, because I'm usually outnumbered and I usually lose. An older drag queen on the edges of the protest slowly waved her hand back and forth over her head in silent testimony. I watch protests and rallies from across the street, and part of me feels so connected to you all, but I don't know if I'm welcome to join. There's lots of us who are on the outside, and we don't want to be. We're getting busted and beaten up. We're dying out there. We need you, but you need us too. I don't know what it would take to really change the world, but couldn't we get together and try to figure it out? Couldn't the we be bigger? Isn't there a way we could help fight each other's battles so that we're not always alone?